we had was an attitude of you could count on the person whether he was in the air or had to jump out and was on the ground. You could just count on that. Boxer 2-2 was a classic example of having, as it ended up, one guy on the ground. And the whole air war in Southeast Asia came to a halt, per se. And I don't have the data right at my fingertips, but it's a huge amount of effort. They were actually backfilling from the United States on that third day munitions because we were expending so much ordnance to get Woody out.
And I believe Brian said last night that he actually went back to Vietnam and took a trip to recover his father's remains.
Yeah.
And he's planning a trip back to Vietnam. Are any of you fellas talking about possibly going along that? Have you ever gone? Would you go back?
I would go back with him. He lives pretty close to where I've associated with the museum, so we've been talking about this for quite some time. I don't know if he's run that by you.
Yeah, he's mentioned it to me. A lot of guys that flew or fought in Vietnam on the ground or in the air have had some need to go back and maybe achieve some sense of closure or something like that. I'm not particularly interested in doing that. I don't have a reason why, but it's just not something that it's not a burning desire in me or a square that I need to fill in some way. Although I would find it interesting to be on the ground in some of those places that we flew over and bombed and various things like that. The idea of going with Brian to try to recover the wing of his dad's airplane is intriguing, but I'm probably I haven't ruled it out, but I'm probably not a big fan.
I'm likewise up to the point where, because I've been working with Brian for the whole time that he's gone through those things up there at Burlington, that I've decided that if he wants me there, I'll go with him. Doesn't make any difference. I don't have to, but if he wants me there, I'll go with him. Because it's recovering his dad. In this case, there's a piece of his airplane, and that's important to him, his family. So that's my position on it.
That goes back to that pilot respect and bond.
Aviators just have it.
We've talked, I've asked every single guy at this reunion about the camaraderie that you share. And have they seen anything like that when they've left the military? What's your experience been between how you operated as operators and the bond you had? Do you see that anywhere outside in the world, in the corporate world, or in anything out of the military?
I've never seen it anywhere other than in the military, and as a subset of the military in general, which has quite a bit of that camaraderie and trust in peacetime units. There's nothing like flying in combat with guys. One of the things I used to say was that combat is the ultimate common denominator, and the cream rises to the crop in a hurry, and everybody knows who the good guys are and who the not so good guys are, because it's just a great discriminator. And it doesn't matter whether you're a lieutenant or a lieutenant colonel. And a lot of us as lieutenants were guys that were, doing the job and were respected for our abilities, both as pilots and as decision makers and leaders, and that was a great feeling. I think of that. What's the Shakespeare? We band of brothers, we few, we happy few.
Yeah.
Those who shed their blood with me today shall be my brother. So.
And Jim was a rescue pilot early on in his career as a lieutenant. I was a wingman as part of the different squadron. I was with the hobos, and we had a different mission, but we had that cadre of people who were selected to be rescue pilots. And I can't tell you, I didn't know how important that was at the time that I was selected. I don't know why. I'm no special guy, but I was selected to be a wingman and then learn what was going on and eventually become a Sandy lead, and I did myself. And so got an opportunity for a rescue. And so there's just something even today, the Sandys are still there in the Air Force, and how it works, I'm not sure. Jim will probably expand on what happens today in the F-16s, but there's that common core of experience that sets us apart.
Yeah, it was a great it was really an honor and a privilege to fly the Sandy mission, and it, you know, I should say something as well about the leadership that we had, because it was very uncommon to be given the amount of responsibility that we were given as young lieutenants. My classmates from the academy and my contemporaries that were flying jet fighters after 8 or 10 months in country in their 1-year tour were upgraded to fly as number 3 in a 4-ship. You know, and we were flight leads after 35 or 40 missions, and we became Sandy pilots, and then we became Sandy leads, and a lot of that was for sure, it was because of our capability, but it was also overwhelmingly because the supervisors that we had, the squadron commanders and operations officers, recognized that we were the ones that could best do the job, and they let us do that. I often have marveled at that, as I was eventually a squadron commander myself, thinking those guys were letting some of these young lieutenants, you know, take the lead on some of these major missions. So it was pretty humbling.